Last episode, LaShawn.
Season finale.
Episode 9. We've done 9 of these.
We have done 9. We're experts at this point.
We are what's the opposite of expert? What we're doing right now is the opposite of expert.
But it's okay. We had a great run.
Yeah. So do you think this turned out well?
I think so. I think we had 9 really great guests, speakers, topics, flips. It was incredible.
To really be in the space with folks who are really thinking about what we could be doing differently, and many of them are doing it, feels inspirational and like a real treat.
Yeah, I think I'm inspired.
I think this is a really good idea I had.
Yeah, I'm so glad that I had this idea.
Anyway, so do you think we should do another one?
I'm down for season 2. How
Season
about you?
2?
Yeah.
Okay, Justin, what do you think? Season 2?
All right, we got the thumbs up.
That was a thumbs up. Excellent.
Coming soon.
I'm really excited for this last one with Damion, though, and for everybody to hear his story. So
we're in for a treat.
Let's get to it.
All right. Welcome to the Flipped Podcast.
Or Flip Ed.
However you hear it, this is a place for joy and dreaming of education.
In each episode, you will hear from educators with an idea, a vision, a revolutionary thought that could flip a switch and change schools for our changed world.
I'm LaShawn.
I'm Mike.
Welcome to Flipped.
Welcome to Flip Ed.
Damion J. Cooper has served as a participant for the Urban American Forward Initiative with the University of Chicago's Center for the Study of Race, Politics, and Culture, which is to promote future-oriented and evidence-based approaches to addressing inequalities that impact historically marginalized groups of urban and metropolitan areas. Damion was also in the inaugural cohort for the Be Me Public Voices Fellowships and the Op-Ed Project. The Be Me Public Voices Fellowship was designed to improve the public discourse and related leadership decisions on important issues by training and supporting groups of expert Black practitioners to become vocal, published, and influential thought leaders. Damion holds degrees from Coppin State University and the United Baptist College and Seminary and is a 2018 graduate of the Leadership, a program of the Greater Baltimore Committee. He was inspired to create Project Pneuma, a holistic program focused on social-emotional learning, forgiveness, and curbing impulse actions from trauma due to adverse childhood experiences in young African-American males by teaching them yoga, mindfulness, breathing techniques, conflict resolution, de-escalation, and martial arts. Welcome, Damion.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's so good to have you. We're excited for you to be here today.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So we were just taken aback by the work that you do, and if you could just start by naming what got you here, like what led you to the work that you do with Project Pneuma.
Well, what led me to this work is an unfortunate incident that happened to me when I was young and in college. I'd gone to Coppin State College, now it's Coppin State University, so I'm showing you how old I am right now. And so I was there on the wrestling scholarship, and after practice, I decided to leave campus and to sneak and go home and get some food because I didn't want the food they were serving on campus that night. And so I took the bus home, and when I got off the bus, I had no idea that I was being followed by 2 young men. I had on headphones and walked to my house, and as I got right beside my house, I sensed someone behind me, and when I turned around, 2 guys were there. No words were exchanged I can hear, and one guy took out his gun and pulled the trigger and shot me inch above the heart. Wow. The bullet ricocheted, cracked my sternum, ricocheted, broke through ribs, and ricocheted and lodged under the nerves of my right arm. And they ran back up the street. My stepdad heard what happened, came out and got me, and actually during this time I had no idea I was shot. I was in shock. The only thing I knew at this point is that they put a hole in my jacket. I had no idea I was shot. And it wasn't until my stepdad took me upstairs and sat me down in front of a full-length mirror, and that's when the pain began to set in. And it felt like someone was taking a sledgehammer against my chest. And my sister was 7 months pregnant at the time. We were very close. I remember my stepdad locking her in the room, and she just kept banging on the door, screaming about what happened to my brother. And my mom sat in her bed. She was a chain smoker back then. And I can still vividly see her rocking back and forth and her hand shaking as she was trying to light a cigarette. And even though during this time I wanted to cry out because I was in so much pain, the only lessons I remember were the lessons I remember from my uncles and the guys in my old community in East Baltimore who always told me, as a black man, you better not cry. You better not show no fear. You better not run. You better not do anything to show that you're hurt. And so here I am here dying in front of my mother, my stepdad, and my sister, and I refuse to cry because of the toxic masculinity that I had learned when I was younger.
Wow.
And so, luckily for me, as you see, I survived that. But what that bullet did to me messed me up, but what it did to me mentally and emotionally and psychologically was way worse than actual physical pain. And so during this time, it really broke me down. It tore me up to the point where I was afraid to go outside. Anytime October the 13th would come around, I would basically hide in the house. I stopped going to school. And essentially for 2 years, I had to lay flat on my back. And so here I am, this big, tough wrestler guy who prior to getting a shot can bench over 200 pounds. Now I can't lift any more than 10 pounds. I couldn't shower by myself. I couldn't go to the restroom by myself. I couldn't do anything. And it broke me down to the point where I couldn't feel like I couldn't take it another day. And I think the last straw for me was when my mom had sent me to the corner store right up the street from my house. It was still daylight. Got to the store, and on my way back, I saw a group of guys coming up the street. Had no idea who they were, but my mom was telling me that these were the guys. So I remember literally hopping into the bushes of my neighbor's house. And I hid in the bushes. And it was still light. When I left the bushes, it was dark. And during this time, I can hear my mother calling my name, trying to find me. And I couldn't speak. I just hid in the bushes because I had no idea where they're coming back to finish the job, even though this wasn't even the guys. It was just what my mind was telling me and my emotions were telling me. And at this point, I had to get away from that neighborhood. And so I remember my best friend and I decided we were going to move away. And I decided to move down to East Baltimore in Upper Fells Point. But it didn't stop the pain. It didn't stop the emotional pain. So I remember on December 31st, 1996, just sitting on the floor of my apartment. And I was going to take my own life because I couldn't take it anymore. I had gone to my mom and stepdad's house and stole his gun from his lockbox. And if you live in Baltimore, a place like Baltimore, you know on New Year's Eve at midnight, everybody's going to start shooting their guns and fireworks.
Right.
So I decided at midnight I was going to take myself out, essentially the way the young man tried to take me out. And I just remember just sitting on this floor, and I lived at 31 North Broadway, and I remember I had 11 windows in that apartment. And as I sat there, just waiting for the clock to strike 12, I guess it was maybe, 8:30, 9 o'clock, somebody rings my bell. And I don't look. I just let the bell ring. And they keep ringing my bell. And then they started ringing all of my neighbors' bells. The man who lived on the first floor, his name was Mr. Kenny. He was an MTA driver. And the lady upstairs, can't remember her name, but she worked for the hotel industry, and she worked overnight. So she was not happy when they kept ringing her bell and waking her up. And I remember she banged on my door. It was like, Damion, your friends out there ringing everybody's bell. You got to go see what they want. So I looked out the window, and it was my best friend. And weirdly enough, all my best friends' names seem to be Damion, like even to this day. And so it was him, and it was the woman I was dating at the time. They were worried about me because I just become a recluse. Wouldn't come out, wouldn't do anything. And they kept asking me to go to church with them. And I was like, why? Because I literally blamed God for me being shot. I mean, I lost everything when I got shot. And I was like, why? I was like, I was a good kid. I was a kid who made it at the projects on a full scholarship. I was a kid who everybody knew was going to succeed and do great things. But then a bullet almost kills me when I'm watching all these dudes on the street doing crazy stuff, and they're just living life, and here I am suffering. So I was like, watch I go to church. And so I basically shut the window, and they started ringing bells again. And so the neighbor came back and really let me have it. And it got to the point where I just acquiesced and said, fine, I'll go to church with you. They had no idea they were taking me to a church 2 blocks away from where I got shot.
Wow.
So now I'm being re-traumatized by going back to the old community in this area. It's called the 4x4 up there near Clifton Park. So they take me to this church, and the church is at the corner of Elmora and St. Cloud. It's called New Pleasant Grove Missionary Baptist Church. And we go into this church, and I am on fire. I can't say the certain words on this podcast.
Actually, you can.
Oh,
it's all right.
Okay, I thought it was child friendly. But I was pissed.
Yeah.
I did not want to be there. And I remember sitting in the back of the church, something like, yeah, I'm in the Baptist church. They're going to pray. They're going to start shouting. I'm going to dip right out the back. As soon as they do it, I'm gone. And then I see the pastor come out, and there's actually a man I've known all my life, had no idea. But he brings out this other man with him, and he was the guest preacher. And so they go up to the pulpit, and the pastor's name was Pastor Robert Haynes, and he introduces the guest preacher, Reverend Michael Cole. And Reverend Michael Cole, little unassuming guy, got up to the pulpit and opened his Bible and said, I'm going to give a few scattered remarks, and I'm going to sit down. And he opened his Bible up to Psalms 30, verse 5. And it says, for his anger endureth but a moment, and his favor is life. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. And he simply entitled his sermon, Joy Comes in the Morning. And Reverend Cole went on to say, I don't care who you are, how much money you got, who your family is, your stature. We all going to go through a night season. We all can go through those times in our life when we feel like we can't take it another step, make it another day. The days you want to take your car and keep driving. The days you never want to get out your bed. We're all going to have those days. He said, I don't care who you are. And he said, your night season may last for 2 days, 2 years, 20 years. It may last a lifetime, but we all going to go through a night season. And he was like, essentially some of you probably going through a night season right now. And then he said something that kind of made me chuckle because I wasn't expecting this. He said, but if you hold on to the but portion of the scripture, I'm like, what? Like, but? And so he was like, and so everybody's looking, he was like, yeah, he said, if you see the word but in the Bible as a conjunction, he said, he said, there's always something bad, and then after that, it's going to be something good. So, weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. So he said, if you look anywhere in the Bible, you see the word but, you're going to see that transition. He said, so if you hold on to that part, your joy will come. So now I'm sitting there, totally entrenched into what he's telling me. And again, I'm in this church full of people, and I'm thinking he's talking just to me. That's how it feels. And I know I told Mike this, so I'm dating myself right now because not many people write checks anymore. And back in the day, in your checkbook, it always had the calendar. And so I'm looking at the dates, October the 13th, 1992. And that night was December the 31st, 1996. That came out to be 4 years, 2 months, and 18 days. That's how long it felt like it was a storm cloud over me. And it felt like for the first time that someone gave me permission to breathe. Because no one understands the effects of a bullet and what it does to your body and what it does to your mind, especially when you don't know why someone did it.
Right.
And I literally felt like the weight of the world was lifted off my shoulders. And Reverend Cole simply ended the sermon the same way he started. And he said, we're going to do something different. We're going to simply kneel down and pray in the new year. He said, if you feel compelled to give your life to Christ, just raise your hand. He said, that way you ain't got to worry about coming up front and nobody looking at you. Everybody can mind their business and we can be done. And I've never been an overly emotional person. When I got shot, I didn't cry. I've seen a lot of death, despair, and destruction. I didn't cry. I remember breaking down into this ugly cry and hopping up. Ugly cry when you dry heaving and snot coming out your nose and you can't control your body because it feel like everything just finally lets loose. I remember running up to the front of this church and just hugging this pastor, and I'm sure I messed up his nice robe with tears and snot. But I just remember him telling me in my ear, he was like, son, whatever you were going through, let it go. It's done. And even though this is happening that night, and I have no idea who shot me, I decided that at this point, I need to forgive the person that shot me, even though I didn't know who he was. And I'm not saying that my life became great after that, because it didn't, but allowed me to refocus and go back to school and get my degree. From there, I transitioned, and the Lord saw fit to say, hey, you're not going to get an BA. I want you to go to seminary, which I said into my life. I said I would never be a preacher. I've never been in politics. Later, I worked in City Hall, and I'll never have children. I have 4. And
Good job keeping your commitments.
Exactly. I know, and 3 is my favorite number, right? And so while I was in seminary, I met this chaplain. His name was Christopher Wallace, who still oversees the prisons, and befriended him, and it was a guy named Reginald Patterson. And Chaplain Wallace asked us to help him at the Baltimore City Correctional Center on Greenmount Avenue. And this was for the men who were in pre-release. They had like 18 months or less, or 3 years and less. And so we would meet in this big multi-purpose room, and when you come to the prison, on the wall, it had the word Vegas, because what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. What happened in that room stayed in that room. And so whatever happened in that room, I don't care if you were in there for killing 20 people, you blew up a building, you set somebody on fire. If you told us what happened, it never left that room. And so for a year and a half, I had absolutely no idea I was mentoring the man who had shot me in 92.
Wow.
Had no idea. But like I said, this room was Vegas. So as we were meeting, more and more his life kept coinciding with mine. And I don't believe in coincidences. I don't believe in happenstance. And so the more he's talking, the more it's reminding me of that night. I go to Chaplain Wallace and I tell him, and I say, Chap, I think this is the man that shot me. And if you ever see Chaplain Wallace, he looks like the very dark-skinned Mr. Clean. Shiny bald head, and he has a really distinctive voice. And I just remember him saying, Doc, no way. And he's telling me, like, you're crazy. I'm like, he was like, it's now 2005. He said, you shot in 92. He says, no way. Because the guy who I was mentoring was in there on an unrelated drug charge. And I was like, Chap, I'm telling you, I think this is him. The challenge with that is that if you ever do work in prison, the prison ministry work, you sign a form that says you can't have any type of personal relationship. I don't care what it is, because they're worried about what may happen. And so I am literally begging this man, like Keith Sweat be begging women in his songs, that I got to talk to this guy. Because again, how can I've been living with this all my life. And so he says, fine, and he clears the room. And he sets up a 6-foot table, a chair for me, a chair for Chaplain Wallace, a chair for the guy, the correctional officer, and we were right behind the guard station. And I was only able to ask this man open-ended questions, which he was used to. So I simply asked, have you done anything that you wish you could tell someone you were sorry, something you wish you'd never done? And so he began to say the things he had done, because he knew whatever he told us, we were in Vegas. First thing, second thing, third thing, nothing. Then I remember Chaplain Wallace tapping my leg and looking at me like, you about to get me fired because I'm not supposed to be doing this. And then just imagine hearing someone that you have been preparing to get out of prison, preparing to have a brand new life, looks you dead in your face and says, yeah, we followed this dude on the number 5 bus, and we watched him cross over the street. And I'm like, Sinclair Lane. This dude walked up the steps to the school, straight up, Sinclair Lane Elementary School. We watched him walk around the back, and we was going to bust him then, but we saw this white dude walking his dog down the street, the neighbor walking down Ravenwood Avenue. They said it, so they hid back in the cut of the school. They said they watched the dude cross over the grass, hop the gate, cross over the street, which in my mind is Chesterfield Avenue. They said they watched him walk up the street and come a little alley street, which led to my street. They said the guy got all the way down to the corner, and he said, my boy told me, yo, if you're going to do it, you got to do it now because you know it's a bus stop right there and people are there. I lived at the corner of Lindale and Chesterfield, and at the corner of my house was the number 50 neighborhood bus. And they said, we ran up on him, and he turned around and I blasted him. Again, you try to wrap your head around someone you've been working with for a year and a half trying to get them ready to come back out into this world right.
Wow.
And he just told you how they stalk you like a dog. And I remember standing up and I saw him straight to his face. I said, you shot me. And a correctional officer whose name was Yvette, I remember dropping her radio and it hit the ground and the guards jumped up like something was about to happen. This dude turned, and the guy who shot me is very light-skinned, he turned beet red. And I say, I forgive you. I remember Chaplain Wallace grabbed my arm. I had on this cheap green suit, this white shirt and this tie. And I remember unloosening my tie, unbuttoning my shirt, and pulling out my T-shirt and showing the hole in my chest. And then he has to look a fight or flight in his face. And I say again, I forgive you. And I'm looking at Chaplain Wallace, who has my arm, and I'm telling him I'm fine. And I essentially go around to the table, and he stands up, and he's looking. And I do the same thing we do every time we leave that room. Every single time we left those rooms, I hugged every single one of those men. Every single time. And I hugged him. I knew, after mentoring this guy for a year and a half, that his father had been killed in prison. I knew that back in the day where Archbishop Curley High School is, there used to be a public housing complex called Freedom Way. Mm-hmm. His mom couldn't even afford the Section 8, so she was selling the body at the corner of Pulaski Highway and Haven Street. Now, people are now seeing her sell her body, and then they teasing him in school. Mm. So now he getting beat up. He's getting picked on in school. He's the older brother to two younger sisters, and he doesn't know what to do. And so what does he do? He now goes and gets with that boys who say they're going to give him safety and protection to be his family. Right. He was 16 when he was shot. When he shot me, I was 20. He was 12, 11 or 12 during that time. This very impressionable age. He had nobody there. He had nobody feeding into him. He had nobody teaching him that it's okay to cry, to feel pain. He didn't know this. But that night was his initiation night, and I happened to be the fool who decided to leave school that night and go home. Mm-hmm. And I know Mike said we had 25 minutes. I know the story was long, but I have to set the stage about the reason why I do this work and the reason why you need to know why he was 12 and so young, and the reason why I focus in on this particular demographic of young boys between 10 and 14 who are going through the same thing, this early stage of adolescence, this phase of who am I going to be? I'm no longer cute and cuddly from grades, K through 3, right? Mm-hmm. I'm no longer, I'm not in high school yet with a little bit of wits about myself, about myself. I'm at this pivotal stage, right? Because I don't know who I'm going to be. My voice is changing. My body is changing. Girls are no longer icky because I'm going through puberty and things are happening. And everybody seems to always run from this particular demographic because we've all been there. Normally in our lives, middle school is usually the worst time in our life because you're trying to figure out. Mm-hmm. And so that led me to this work I'm doing now. I was blessed to win this grant in 2014. It came with a $10,000 seed grant. And I decided I wanted to reinvest the money back into my community. At this time, I was working in City Hall for the council president, and I talked to him, the mayor, and the commissioner. I said, hey, I'd like to use this money and begin working with young men in this particular demographic, while also working with the police department, because at this point, Fox 45 is constantly running. Mm-hmm. All these black kids they're doing bad in the street. Black kids and cops can't get along. Not honestly, I think today is the day that Mike Brown was actually killed in Ferguson, Missouri. I think today would have been his birthday. And that's another big reason why I do this work. And so, I'm sorry, if you need to ask a question, please, I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry.
I think you're like leading right into the flip, right? Yeah. So that incredible story leads directly to what you think a flip should be, right? And so you're talking about investing in particularly young black boys who are between what grades fourth through eighth grade. And so if you were going to do the flip, what kind of investment are you talking about? What's the flip we need to do?
The flip for me is very simple. We often see black boys as athletic commodities. We focus more on sports with them than anything else, but we never focus in on their heart and their mind.
Yeah.
My flip would be, let's focus in on that first. Let's make sure that they are mentally and emotionally prepared for sports, for life. We have too many rich athletes who are still going through their very first stage of adolescence because no one was there to nurture them through that. I want to be that conduit. I want us to be that conduit to these young boys so we won't need a Roka, so we won't need a Safe Streets, and we can feed into them proactively, early, before they get to high school, why they're going through this stage of adolescence, why they're going through this who am I phase, when they may not have the greatest of support systems in their communities. They may be going through food deserts and yellow police tape. This is that pivotal time to be proactive to help these young men emotionally, mentally, holistically.
And so what should schools do, right? Schools are generally, historically equipped for, textbooks and then maybe there's like after school sports, as you're saying. But so if schools are like, how are we investing in hearts and minds?
What we do is principals, the community, they need to speak up more, because the one thing I've now learned from doing this work, from not even being an educator, is that you guys have a great deal of pressure on you. You guys take on everything that they have at home in their communities.
Right.
But yet you're often short on social workers. You don't have a wholeness specialist in every single room. You may have a wholeness room, but collectively we all need to begin coming together and saying this is what's needed truly to begin helping to make that change in our city. The one thing I always say is that numbers never lie. We look at numbers, right? More money is given to reactive organizations. It takes $400,000 a year to house one. Now, let me be correct. It's $399,805 a year to house one kid in the Department of Juvenile Justice. $400,000 for one kid. 125 beds times $400,000. Safe Streets gets $24,600,000 over the 3 years. Roka does great work, but they still focus on those who've already been in trouble.
Right.
Their 2019 data, they were getting about $16,000. You have organizations or you have schools who are not getting the funding that you need. It takes me $8,000 a year to help a child, but yet they're telling me that's too much money, or you guys aren't, or you don't, or you have enough money. How can we proactively help when we can't have the money to truly help? You can't give the resources that you really need to help unless they get in trouble. If they get in trouble, all the money is there because crime is marketable. Again, we follow the dollars. Freddie Gray killed, money flooded in. Mike Brown was killed, money flooded in. George Floyd was killed, money flooded in. And again, nothing against city schools, I don't see them flooding in to give additional resources to do this.
Exactly.
Or to have kids on this podcast, or to help them to doing this type of work. If we don't begin doing things proactively, my old boss used to say this: you either pay now or you pay later. And I always tell people this: if any of us go to the hospital, if you're sick, the first thing you're going to do, they're going to triage you. They're going to take your weight, give a urine sample, take blood, ask you a million questions. They're going to sit you in a room. You're going to scroll through your phone. And you're not going to see your doctor until your doctor has a full prognosis of what's going on. Then they'll come in and say, oh, Mike, you're here for X, Y, and Z. Now I know the root cause Now I know I can help you. That's being proactive. In Baltimore, everything is straight to shock trauma. Stop the bleed. Stop crime. Make kids smarter. Make ELA go up. Make math grades go up. Stop them from fighting automatically. But we never, ever, ever get to the root cause. How can you truly do your job? How can the community do their job? How can we do our jobs, Project Pneuma, if we're not allowed to be proactive in our efforts?
All right, so you've had a chance to do your flip. So you've had a chance to make your flip come alive to some extent.
Yes.
So, sort of as we kind of close out our time today, investing in the hearts and minds of these young people, what do you do at Project Pneuma to invest in the hearts and minds of these young people?
We are longitudinal. So the big thing for us is that I did not want to do a program where we're just meeting with kids once a month. You don't get anything out of that.
Right.
We want to be with these young boys from grades 4 through 8 so we can grow with them, because we know even at that young age, they've been through a lot of hell already. And so we're with you longitudinally every single year. You are learning, you're growing, you're building, you're becoming who you're supposed to be. You're learning that you're not ADHD, you're not ODD. You know that you're an asset in the building, you're a grower. And so we want to make sure that we feed into you that you understand what social emotional learning is. We want you to understand what mindfulness is. We want you to understand that it's okay, that if you need to cry sometimes, it's fine, and to express your emotions and get off your chest instead of holding it in. Pneuma is Greek. Pneuma literally means wind, breath, spirit, breath of life. Because oftentimes when our young people get upset, especially men, and even at our age, when we get upset, we don't breathe correctly. We immediately do this. We hold it in, and we don't let it out until we explode on someone else or we implode inside. Project Pneuma teaches you how to breathe effectively so you're not exploding. We know between 13 to 33 seconds, that's all it takes for someone to cuss you out, to punch you in the face, to shoot you. But if you learn how to control your breath and control your emotions within that 13 to 33 seconds, you're able to walk away. You're able to say, Principal Chalup, I'm not having the greatest of days, and I might need a moment to myself. You get a moment to self-regulate. This is what we are doing. And again, it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight.
Cool. Damion, thanks for sharing your story today. Thanks for
Thank you for
sharing
having
your
me.
work and your flip. Yeah.
That was amazing.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, Lasan.
Hey, Mike.
That was quite an incredible last story for our
my
podcast.
Goodness.
What are you taking away from this one?
There's so much. There's so much that I'm walking away with. Two really quick things was, I think what I heard underscored so much in his story was the part about forgiveness. And I really just I just really love that idea, and I wonder what it would be like to like really teach kids how to forgive. Like forgiveness is really for ourselves, right? And that showed up so much in his story, but I wonder if that was a piece of when we're talking about like teaching kids how to regulate their emotions and, diving into apologies when kids harm each other. But like really, what does forgiveness look like from the lens of a child that's been had their foot stepped on, or had a pencil stolen,
Or their feelings hurt.
Or their feelings hurt. Like I'm sort of circling that idea in my mind. And then I also really the piece about the funding and how it's almost $400,000 to house one child.
Incredible, isn't it?
That is incredible. When you think about the allocation of funds, like what could we do with just that $400,000 for one kid for 1 year? Like, how much of a difference could we make if those funds were allocated to programs within schools that really helped to be proactive?
If the human part isn't like compelling enough, then just the numbers part,
Exactly.
right? So just if you don't really care about the hearts and minds part, like You know, the
Right.
pocketbook should get you,
That
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
I think all of that. I mean, I think really thinking about how schools can be also places that are really thinking about the hearts and minds of
Yeah.
kids is, of course, something that's dear to our hearts. I'm really also just happy to end the season on this such a human story, right? Like, there's the things we can do educationally as teachers and really think about hearts and minds and how to do that, and really thinking about the stories of the children who are in our schools,
Yeah.
but just the humanness of that story,
Yeah.
the forgiveness, that joy comes in the morning,
Yeah.
and remembering the butts, and right, like
Yeah.
all of that. I think that is actually all of that humanness is the core of what good schools
Yeah.
and what we should be striving to do. So
It's really powerful.
yeah, I'll be sitting with it for a while.
Yeah. By the way, Mike, I forgive you.
I'm still working on it.